Hi, and welcome to the video. Thanks for checking out my designs. These designs were created for and inspired by a contest originally conceived by Neil Taylor on his channel Post to Post. That's probably why you're here. In the contest, he encouraged people to consider an alternate genesis for a given NHL franchise and design a logo based on that team's DNA. I took that inspiration and created a different original name and logo for all 32 teams based on historical and other real-world factors. These logos are all drawn by hand and colored with marker, and unfortunately some of their digital copies were unable to accurately reproduce those colors, as you'll soon see. Considerations for the time period of each team entering the league was integral to the logo design and colors. Also, if a franchise has moved during its original history, this timeline accounts only for the current iteration of that franchise. For example, Carolina's birth is 1997, regardless of the history of the Hartford Whalers. You're welcome, Winnipeg. Sorry, Atlanta. Up first, born in 1909, the Montreal franchise predates the league itself, so suggesting a different name for it feels a little wrong. However, a treasured symbol of both Quebec and Montreal's French roots, the Fleur-de-Lis appears on both the provincial and municipal flags. This design borrows from and is intended to celebrate the city's flag specifically by including the red heraldic cross. The logo is very simple to remain consistent with the period of time it would have been created. The Boston Bruins were founded in 1924 by Charles Adams and were the first team to be based in the United States. Their colors, brown and yellow, were chosen to match Adams' grocery store's first national stores. So, the Boston Nationals would exist to promote Adams' stores, including with their colors. The team represents all of America, symbolized by an eagle, the same featured on many First National Stores materials. The capitalized and italicized font is consistent with First National Stores advertisements, and the overall logo is consistent with 1920s design. The Chicago Blackhawks' original owner, Frederick Major McLaughlin, was a proud soldier and commander during World War I. He named the team after the 86th Infantry Black Hawk Division, in which he served. The division was named after Sauk warrior Black Hawk of Illinois. Major McLaughlin was known throughout his life as a spirited military man. American infantrymen were universally called Doughboys during World War I, a term they carried with honor. Shortly after the war, sculptor E.M. Vicasny designed a copper memorial named Spirit of the American Doughboy, which was so popular that more than 150 copies were made for municipalities across the country during the 1920s. 3 of them were erected in Chicago alone, and 1 is exhibited at Soldier Field, home of the Chicago Bears, to this day. The team colors are khaki tan and green to match the Army uniforms, with the memorial in copper. The New York Rangers were founded in 1926 by George Louis Tex Ricard. They were called the Rangers purely due to Tex's nickname. However, Tex had actually migrated through many American and Canadian cities prior to settling in New York, and he was regarded for opening saloons as he went, always naming them the Northern. In an alternate reality, it would be feasible that he might name his hockey team the same name. The name would then have dual meaning. First, referencing the Union Army during America's Civil War, thus the colors dark and light blue. Secondly, referencing the countless who play the sport in the Great White North. A bit tongue-in-cheek, as New York was the southernmost NHL team at the time of its inception. The logo is consistent with 1920s style, and the font is the same as the sign above Texas' famous saloons. When Conn Smythe bought the Toronto NHL franchise in 1927, he changed the name to Maple Leafs. But to know the man, Sappers would have been an apt choice. What is a sapper? The term originally referred to soldiers who dug trenches. Conn Smythe was immensely proud of his service in the trenches during World War I. Sapper then became an official rank in the Canadian Military Engineers. Immediately after the war, Smythe earned a civil engineering degree. Finally, sapper is a slang term for maple sap harvester. Smythe in fact named his team the Maple Leafs. Other Conn Smythe facts: he famously gained his wealth from a successful sand and gravel business. Conn's wife Irene Smythe's maiden name was Sands, As a German POW, Smythe wearied from, quote, playing so damned much bridge. In the logo, the sand color and sandbags represents Kahn's business, his wife, and his World War I service. The red maple trees are a symbol for Canada and are tapped for syrup. The bridge is the famous Bathurst Street Bridge, a Toronto landmark in the 1920s, later renamed to honor Sir Isaac Brock. Represents Kahn's engineering degree and POW remarks. The McAdam shield shovels with rifle sight holes were invented by Canadian Sam Hughes for use in World War I. This logo is an imperfect concept. Ideally, the shovels would be the primary element and the shovels would be slightly lower so that the gap between them and the bridge is equal to the gap underneath them and the base of the logo. Also, the gray color would be the same for every shovel. The marker started to run dry. 1927, throw it all in there, and then eventually end up with just the McAdam shield shovel as the primary element. When James E. Norris bought Detroit's NHL franchise in 1932, he changed the name from Falcons, originally Cougars, to Red Wings. Norris was born in Quebec and operated businesses in Toronto and Chicago. He tried, but failed, to put his own NHL franchise in Chicago, St. Louis, or Toronto. When he acquired the Detroit franchise, he wanted to use the Winged Wheelers logo he had worn with the old Montreal Hockey Club, hoping to appeal to the city of Detroit's automakers. The city of Detroit was founded in 1701 by the French explorer Antoine de la Motte Cadillac, who created his own coat of arms, the original logo designer. The Cadillac Auto Company also designed their logo after this beloved symbol of the city, so utilizing it as his hockey team's moniker would accomplish Norris's cronyism goals, while also uniquely representing the city of Detroit, rather than borrowing a symbol from the Montreal Hockey Club. We get to the 67 expansion. Pittsburgh is famous for its rivers, bridges, and steel, especially so during the time of NHL expansion. Hellbenders are giant salamanders over a foot long found in the Allegheny River waters. Conditions in Pittsburgh in the 1960s were so poor, it was infamously called Hell by the people who lived there. The name Hellbenders also evokes the idea of bending steel and carries the added bonus of being a super intimidating name. Unfortunately, the colors of the logo were altered when reproduced digitally. The Hellbender itself should be a dark green color, which would contrast and pop more against the other colors of the logo. The colors of the I-beams, making up the PH script, should match the famous red iron steel found in buildings across the country. Philadelphia and boxing history go hand in hand. Add in the alliteration, which was ultimately the final factor for Philadelphia Flyers founder Ed Snyder, makes this the perfect name for the 1960s hockey team, and the perfect city for a team with that name. In true hockey fashion, the fighter challenges with bare-knuckle fists. The blue and yellow color scheme draws from both the state and city flag. The most iconic symbol of St. Louis has to be the Gateway Arch, and the most famous event in the city's history has to be the 1904 World's Fair. The arch was built to celebrate the westward expansion of the United States, the Louisiana Purchase, and expeditions of explorers Lewis and Clark. It is fitting that during the largest NHL expansion, when it experienced more exposure than ever before, the city which hosted the largest exhibition in history would have a team called the Expos. The colors are drawn from the St. Louis city flag and match the city's famous baseball team, the Cardinals. Unfortunately, the digitization of the logo preserved some artifacts from its creation, including an ink bleed on the STL and erased pencil marks around the X of Expos. Los Angeles is famous for movies, and at the time of NHL expansion, westerns were still the most popular genre in Hollywood. Sensationalizing the imagery of a puck as a bullet with a tail of film strip, this team attempts to capture the energy of its iconic town. Like the Nationals and Northerners, and contemporary of the Expos, the LA Shots wordmark is designed to be part of the team's identity. The colors are also distinctly not brown and black, they are sienna and charcoal, because everybody knows the story of Forum Blue. The city of Vancouver was incorporated the same year that the Canadian Pacific Railway established it as its terminus, and it was the railway president who gave the city its name. Within 25 years, the city had grown from a few thousand people to over 100,000. While there are many rail-related names that could work for this team, Locomotives is both intimidating and naturally pairs with the word Vancouver. The color scheme is the first in this alternate NHL to incorporate silver, while also the first to champion the orange and black aesthetic. In the same spirit as original owners Seymour and Northrop Knox, wanting to avoid the generic Buffalo Bison naming device, I've leaned into the city's association with Niagara Falls. Perhaps I've gone overboard. Buffalo has always been an important shipping port, and the team name evokes a style of play denoting hard-hitting hockey. Spurring rivalry with their New York brethren to the south, the Northerners, the Barrels also utilize a brown and blue color scheme, but with the primary and secondary color reversed. The big brother teams of New York in the four major sports are the Yankees, Giants, Rangers, and Knicks. Their younger counterparts are the Mets, Jets, Nets, and Islanders. Come on. What a missed opportunity. It's not even that far-fetched for the Islanders to follow suit. The man behind the inception of the team, William Shea, was also influential in bringing about the Mets, Jets, and Nets. And the first majority owner of the Islanders, Roy Bowe, also owned the Nets. Roy Bowe was a Korean War veteran himself, and the Islanders' home arena from their beginning through most of their history was Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum. The logo features the remembrance poppy and chevrons, symbols of veterans associations around the globe, especially in Canada and the United States. The Veterans are also the first team in this alternate NHL to have a red and black color scheme. The history of this franchise is built upon one man, Abe Pollin. The singular impact that this one man made in both sports and property values in and around Washington, D.C. cannot be understated. He grew up in the city and made his money in the construction business. But housing was not just a financial endeavor for him. It was a passion, as evidenced by his many philanthropic projects. In the world of sports, he bought the Chicago Zephyrs NBA team in 1963 and immediately moved them to nearby Baltimore area. A decade later, he personally financed the construction of Capitol Center in Landover, Maryland, and moved his Baltimore team there, renaming them the Capitol Bullets. A year later, they changed to the Washington Bullets, and the NHL's Washington Capitals were born. Many decades later, he personally financed another arena for his NBA and NHL teams within Washington, D.C. proper, and is credited with revitalizing the previously dilapidated area. Given Mr. Pollin's affinity for the name Capital, I've retained that in this alternate genesis, while also honoring his construction legacy with a hockey-appropriate pun, complementing the Capitol Bullets team with whom they share a home. The team's color scheme leans into the construction aesthetic by reflecting the limestone masonry that Washington, D.C. is famous for. It is very likely that at some point the logo would be recolorized to either red, white, and blue, or something more drastic, a la the bronze and teal that the Capitals adopted in the mid-90s. But in 1974, this is their crest. The cultural identities of the city of Edmonton and the province of Alberta are strongly associated with hard work and industry. Edmonton began as a trading post for beaver pelts. The area is named for the beaver trade by the indigenous people who live there, and geographically features the Beaver Hills region. The beaver is also the national animal of Canada, and has been called the hardest working animal for its industriousness. The logo prominently features the province of Alberta, and the lavender color, which failed to properly render digitally, is drawn from the city's crest, which also features a fur trader. This team's primary jersey color, complemented by lavender and wooden brown, is a deep forest green, seen on the edges of the logo. The city of Calgary is situated at the confluence of the Bow River and the Elbow River, and Indigenous people call the area Elbow. Of course, the city is also internationally famous for their love of horses. When the Atlanta Flames moved to Calgary in 1980, they decided to keep the team name. But in this new genesis, we get to ride the equestrian motif. Sure, it would be hilarious to name the team the Calgary Cavalry. But when considering the city's location in the Rocky Mountains, we instead take the opportunity to honor Canada's iconic Mounties. The color scheme for this team was obvious. Nothing is more Calgary than red, brown, black. Future rebranding and jersey design for this team would likely feature mountains more prominently, but at their formation, this is their design. The New Jersey Devils' first owner, John McMullen, was born in New Jersey and moved to the Colorado Rockies to his home state immediately after purchasing the franchise, renaming them the Devils. McMullen graduated from the United States Naval Academy in 1940 as a naval architect and rose to the rank of commander during a 15-year naval career. During World War II, the Camden Shipyards in New Jersey was the biggest and most productive shipyard in the world, producing 9 aircraft carriers and the battleship USS South Dakota. The United States Naval Academy later honored McMullen's naval and ice hockey backgrounds by naming their hockey team's rink after him. Like the Buffalo Barrels before them, the New Jersey Battleships modeled their color scheme after their rival New York Northerners, but this time inverting the two-tone blue and adding a signature battleship gray. The 1990s is when the NHL saw massive expansion, and with it came some of the wildest logos, color schemes, and team names yet. You can blame the NBA's Charlotte Hornets if you want, but after the San Jose Sharks introduced a teal jersey in 1991, everybody had to have teal. In this alternate history, the Sharks' boldness manifests with aquamarine and lime green. The Cyborgs name reflects their Silicon Valley location, and believe it or not, the circuit board design of this logo was created before I discovered the Sharks actually used the pattern on their black alternate jersey. Pretty cool. Ottawa's most famous landmark is the Peace Tower at Canadian Parliament. Housed within the tower is a 53-bell carillon. The name Bellringers celebrates the hard hits of hockey, while inviting the hearer to recall the resounding success of Ottawa's original NHL franchise. The logo features the black, red, white O of the old Senators, with curved red lines demonstrating the sound of the bell and mimicking the design of the city flag. The logo, while simple, features bold colors not yet seen in this alternate NHL, including oxidized copper green and a poorly rendered metallic gold. When Phil and Tony Esposito were granted an expansion franchise in the early 90s, they were presented with a significant challenge. How do you make hockey popular in Florida? For this alternate genesis, they forge an identity that is uniquely Tampa. The Tampa Bay area would not be what it is today without the military bases established at its foundation. And as every 90s kid will remember, tanks were extremely popular due to their prominence in Gulf War footage. Taking on a double meaning for local Floridians, Tampa Bay is also famous for its aquariums, particularly Florida Aquarium, which is adjacent to Amalie Arena, where the team plays. The aquarium's imposing roof is featured in the logo. The color scheme is orange and blue, drawing inspiration from the area's water features and citrus production. These colors go together perfectly, and no team yet has them in this alternate NHL. This logo design is far from unique, but there's usually a good reason when something is the obvious perfect choice. Texas is the Lone Star State, and the emblem of the famous Texas Rangers is the encircled star. When the Minnesota North Stars moved to Dallas in 1993, they missed a perfect opportunity to embrace a truly Texan identity. Rather than limit themselves to Dallas, the team should have adopted the entire state, and keeping green as their primary color was a mistake. In this alternate history, the franchise gets it right. The Texas Lone Stars. Red, white, blue, and bronze. When Florida was granted a second NHL franchise in 1993, the team shared an arena with the NBA's Miami Heat. The name chosen was the Panthers, supposedly to draw attention to the endemic endangered species, but more accurately, because team owner Wayne Huizenga already owned the trademark, electing not to use it, as originally planned, for his expansion baseball franchise, the Florida Marlins, which were also born in 1993. Rather than a generic animal name, in this genesis, the Florida franchise rides the current trend of abstract conceptual names that don't end in S, a la Lightning, Avalanche, Magic, Jazz, and cashing in on brand association with their arena brothers, the Heat. The name Rise works on multiple levels, including the rising temperatures in southern Florida, marshwater rise, and of course, sunrise, where the team would move in later years. All of these are depicted in the logo, which also incorporates a hockey goal rather than the more common stick motif. Rather than going simple or traditional with colors and crest, this team embodies boldness, emphatically embracing their Floridian identity. The Mighty Ducks of Anaheim, the NHL's literal Mickey Mouse franchise. Perhaps I should have named this team the Commodores of California. Rather than name the team after a goofy kids movie, I've decided to tap into a very different kind of nostalgia and created a more traditional branding for this team's genesis. The man behind the Mighty Ducks was Disney CEO Michael Eisner. Growing up in Manhattan and a fan of the New York Rangers, he knew hockey before he knew Southern California. As a child, his fondest memories were at Camp Keewaydin, meaning strong wind, which ventured into Canada and was founded by Greg the Commodore Clark. A la Rosebud. It's childhood memories that drive megalomaniacal magnets. In this alternate genesis, Eisner embraces the statewide branding, probably to the chagrin of Los Angeles and San Jose, matching Anaheim's other professional team, known at the time as the California Angels, before messing around with the nonsensical Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Thanks, Mighty Ducks, for starting that. And Eisner chooses a black and yellow color scheme, matching the stripes of the eponymous naval officer's uniform, and being the first franchise in this alternate NHL to do so. In the wake of 1993's Jurassic Park, dinosaurs were the epitome of cool. Despite zero connection to anything Toronto, Canada, or even basketball, the Toronto Raptors were born in 1995. When selecting an intimidating yet kid-friendly moniker, you can't get much better than this, and somehow the NHL missed out. After all, the Dinosaur National Monument is in Colorado. Of course, this team was always going to shirk the convention of plural name in favor of a concept or event like Avalanche, but it is not widely known that the team ownership originally decided to name the franchise Rocky Mountain Extreme. But a newspaper leaked the name, and fan response was so overwhelmingly negative that they went with Colorado Avalanche instead. Probably for the best. I mean, what exactly is an extreme? But to ditch the Rocky Mountain title was short-sighted. All that needed to change was Rex, and you instantly have the most badass team name around. This logo has colorization errors, as the mountains are intended to be pink and white rather than black and white. The Rex are in fact only the second team in this alternate NHL to adopt green as their primary color. And yes, a hockey team can pull off pink when it works so perfectly with their primary color, and when you're named after a freaking Tyrannosaurus. How did the Arizona Coyotes get their name? It received the most fan votes in a fan contest. Really, that's it. No history, no cultural identity, no special significance. It was clear that the owners wanted the team named after an animal inhabitant of the Sonoran Desert, and Scorpions finished in second place. This alternate genesis simply assumes the vote went differently. Just like their NFL counterparts, the Cardinals, the Coyotes flirted with the name Phoenix before switching to Arizona in 1994. Baseball's Arizona Diamondbacks got it right from the hop in 1998. And we'll give the Scorpions the benefit of perfect hindsight here in 1996. While it's technically not possible to have white as your primary color, sorry Winnipeg fans, it can be paired with a single other color for a simplistic home and away scheme. Right, Detroit? Toronto? Tampa? The Scorpions' crest features the creature in white over the Arizona state flag's sunset imagery in a brick, raspberry, maroon shade of red that is unique to this team. There were a lot of things the Carolina Hurricanes got wrong in 1997 when they moved from Hartford and began operations in their new home to the south. So much so that their viability as a franchise was brought into question numerous times over their history. Foremost among the criticisms was the choice of Raleigh over the far more populous Charlotte. And then playing games a full 90 minutes away in Greensboro during their first 2 years due to arena problems. The Hurricanes were a disaster in branding and securing fan support. So my intention here is to build a more appealing, specifically Carolina brand identity out of the gate. While Raleigh is their home, the Hurricanes have always wanted to identify with the entire Research Triangle region of the state, including Durham and Chapel Hill. These are college towns full of passionate fans obsessed with their campus teams and colors. The Hurricanes chose red and black to match the North Carolina State Wolfpack, but they ignored the far more popular UNC Tar Heels or equally popular Duke Blue Devils. There's a reason the NFL's Carolina Panthers chose Carolina Blue as their primary color just 2 years earlier. In this alternate genesis, the franchise leans hard into those Carolina college campus connections, incorporating both blue and red, and combining the Tar Heels and Wolfpack names to form the Tar Pack. This also pays homage to Carolina's agricultural and economic history as an entendre for tobacco cigarettes. Until the last minute, I considered calling this team the Triangle Tar Pack to create an even stronger connection with their home region, but finally determined that might be a step too far and acquiesced to just Carolina Labs. Their mascot is, of course, the black Labrador dog, in honor of the many research labs making the area famous. And the labs make up the Tar Pack. The Nashville Predators had a logo before they had a name. Somehow, with all the culture and identity of this famous town, the team felt the most association with a saber-toothed tiger skull. And then, from the corner they painted themselves into, scrambled to find a usable name. Nashville, the home of Predators. Let's fix this. Nothing is more Nashville than music, especially country music. The banjo, the fiddle, and of course, the guitar. Strings. The Predators only began incorporating musical elements into their branding recently, and the guitar pick shoulder patch is exactly what it ought to be. This logo utilizes the guitar pick for its base shape, and purple as its primary color. This is the 90s after all. Somehow, this is the only team in this alternate NHL to incorporate purple, and that's a shame. The wordmark strings is lettered using a Western-style font named Nashville. And finally, there's a hockey stick, like so many other franchises, just in case there is any confusion what this logo represents. Please excuse the cosmetic flaws in this logo, as tracing artifacts are visible on the banjo, and the logo on the whole fails to present any depth due to lack of proper shading. Columbus, Ohio. Cowtown, USA. Believe it or not, the largest cattle farm in the world at one point, Hartman Stock Farm, is in Ohio of all places, and Columbus to be exact. One of the most prominent exhibits on display at Ohio's most prominent history museum, the Ohio History Center in Columbus, is a two-headed calf which was taxidermied in 1915. Columbus is also home to the headquarters of numerous fast food chains, including both Wendy's and White Castle. In terms of hockey, this team name sets an immediate tone, challenging rivals with an attitude that this team is always ready to fight. This logo takes opportunity to mirror the contrasting red and blue from the Ohio flag, complemented by a neutral gray, and features a tongue-in-cheek swap of a hamburger patty on a hockey stick and a puck on a grill. Minnesota, woods, lakes, and bitter, bitter cold. Minnesota hockey is just more fun outdoors. These colors, lake blue, forest green, snow white, and ice, are a perfect match for Minnesota. But there's history here too. When the Winnipeg Jets were sold in 1996, Richard Burke made plans to move them to Minnesota and rename them the Freeze. Only when an arena deal fell through was the team moved to Phoenix instead. Just 3 years later, Minnesota was granted an expansion franchise, and Freeze was one of 6 finalists, including Wild. Sure, much of Minnesota state is wild, but mostly because it is frozen, including the Twin Cities, where the team plays. The logo is quite busy for a jersey crest, but suggests enough to have a lot of fun with jersey design. Perhaps the front of the jersey would feature just the snow-capped MN. Consider how the New York Rangers logo doesn't appear on their jerseys. But then elements of green and blue can also be incorporated into the jersey without feeling out of place. The Winnipeg Jets may be owned by True North Sports, but the city of Winnipeg is known as the Gateway to the West. Rather than recycle the branding of their former team, this iteration salutes Winnipeg's largest annual event, the Festival du Voyageur, and celebrates the country's historic roots. The logo combines the elements of the festival's signature toque mascot with the iconic Voyageur canoe. Bucking the common trend of choosing a team name from a list of options, often voted by or at least market researched among proposed fans of the team, the decision to name the Golden Knights was entirely the choice of one man, owner Bill Foley. He is a graduate of the United States Military Academy and loves the Army Black Knights. The Army logo consists of a golden helmet on a shield. For a city known for excess, the name lacks any creativity. If I say Knights, You might think of a dozen places before you land on Vegas. But if I say neon, it's your first guess. The same goes for the words luck or gambling. Fortunes incorporates both ideas, while going all in on the allure of instant success. The boldness of this team, with their unique style, in this city, establishes an identity and puts the good old boys league on notice. This logo was designed using markers and gel pens to give the illusion of glow. Unfortunately, when digitized, it loses all texture and flattens the colors. If you look closely, you can still see the yellow around the edge of the world-famous sign. We all remember the ridiculously drawn-out process to reveal the name of the NHL's 32nd franchise. For a year and a half, we had a list of 13 possible names, and everyone debated which was the best. Sockeyes topped many polls and rankings, including my own, and was even teased by the team when the official NHL Seattle website debuted with a pink color scheme. Unlike the Kraken, which is a Scandinavian legend, the Sockeye salmon is native to the Seattle region and culturally prominent. The name also immediately evokes the memory of old-school hockey brawls. Unfortunately, the Sockeyes option was likely taken off the table when it was discovered that a Seattle-based romance writer had already trademarked the name. The hand-drawn logo is a bit unbalanced, particularly by the poorly realized pink gradient taking up too much space, pulling attention away from the eye, lip, and jaws. And that's the whole league. Feel free to comment your favorites below, whether it is based on the artwork or the franchise history. You can even rank all 32 logos if you feel so motivated. Thanks again to Neil from Post to Post for inspiring this set. It was such a therapeutic experience for me to make them. And thank you for giving your time to watch this video.